Yo guys, what's up? It's your boy Vhexrr, back again with another video. Now, today we're going to be doing something a little bit more different than usual. Sometimes I upload cinematics and stuff like that. Obviously I've been doing quite a few showcases of the Underground Unleashed scripts and whatnot that we've kind of been implementing. Today, as some of you may know, I do have a reshade on my Patreon that I release every now and then. Given haven't really had that much time to do it lately, so it's kind of been on pause a little bit. However, today what I'm going to show you is how to put together a decent looking reshade so that your game can look like some of my screenshots and whatnot. I mean, for example, right, this is one of my most recent ones that I put together, and I mean, it gives it a bit of a cool tone to the game. But yeah, I mean, if we go ahead and change, for example, the time, let's go to evening. It still looks pretty good. Obviously that's off, that's on. Obviously different weathers, we can do overcast, say 3 o'clock. Then let's go to Underground Customs over here. So this is vanilla game, or with NVE, and that's with the reshade on. So as you can see, obviously it's a bit more of a cool tone, but it doesn't get rid of like the skin colors. It kind of makes them pop out a little bit more with the redness and the oranges. Obviously some of the purples, reds are a little bit more dulled down, but that's just because of this current reshade. Now what I will be doing is creating something completely fresh, and I'm not going to speed anything up in this video. It might end up being like a 20-minute video or something, but I kind of just want to go over some of the principles of creating a reshade and in what order you should pretty much put most of your effects and whatnot. I mean, here as you can see, it's ER34, and what we'll do is just leave this here. What I tend to like to do is to use cinematic cam on just on a car as I do the reshade, just because I feel like whenever I do take pictures and stuff, obviously I'm going to be taking it through cinematic cam, so I want to kind of just put that into perspective before I start making the reshade. So today I think we'll maybe do more of like a summery vibe type of reshade, so we'll go extra sunny and what's that, 12 o'clock? Yeah, and then we'll just freeze both of them. Freeze time, freeze weather. Right, so here's our base essentially. Now when you open up reshade, I'm going to create a new preset, and we're just going to call it YouTube test, I guess. That's going to reload reshade, and then what you want to do is put the effects on. So a lot of you might have messed about with, oh, I need to move my camera actually. Hold on. Let's just do this. Can I move all of it? Yes, I can. Right, I'm just going to move myself over here so that you guys can see the rest of, everything. So as you can see, I've set my overlay key as page down and my effect key to page up. I just feel like personally that's my preference. It's what I find easiest to work with. And then what you want to make sure in your reshade is that all of your shaders are in the search paths as directed. Usually I think reshade will do this automatically when you install it, but just in case, just basically make sure that everything is there where it should be. So what I tend to use effects wise is LUT packs, occasionally RTGI. Lately I've been putting a bit more bloom into my reshades. Lightroom is definitely one of the top tier things to use, just because it lets you mess about with the colors, with the brightness, the saturation, and the luminosity and everything. Luminance, same thing. You get what I'm trying to say. So what we'll start off, and obviously for you guys to have all the effects and whatnot, you do need to select all the effects whenever you're installing reshade. I will probably link a video somewhere down the bottom for how to install reshade onto the latest FiveM builds and whatnot like that. So one thing that I've also been doing a lot is just clicking on filters and see what they do, because I mean, look at that. Obviously you're not going to use that for photography reshade, but if you're doing some trippy video, I guess that could work for you. Now another thing is, if you're using depth of field or RTGI, you do need to make sure that your display depth does work. I will try and find a video on how to fix that if it doesn't work for you, but regardless, just check out the description in case there's anything there that I might or might not have missed. So to begin, what we want is levels. Levels is good to use. It's up to you whether you want to use levels plus or levels. I'll probably just stick with levels just because it's a bit less of a harsh effect. Magic Bloom is something that I've been using quite a bit lately. It does add a bit of like a what is the word? Just kind of brightens up the image a little bit sometimes, which can look nicer. This LUT you don't really need to use. I think this is just like if you make a personal one that you need to like mess about with the files and whatnot. Magic HDR can sometimes look good. Obviously, sometimes if you hover over the effect, it will kind of give a description of what it is. So this is bloom and tone mapping. Again, there's a lot of things that you can mess about with and that you probably should. However, one of the things that I've realized is a lot of people get my reshades and they're like, oh, it doesn't look the same as yours. But what they end up doing is messing about with it and stopping it working. So then they have to re-download the whole thing and it just becomes a long process. And honestly, don't do that. If you get my reshades, just drop it into your game, see how it looks. If it doesn't work, you can message the Discord and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Now, multi-LUT is very useful. Very, very useful. There's also Native Enhancer, which is again pretty much like a LUT pack. But it's just, there's also a guide here if you really want to go through it. But with this, you can pretty much change anything. Like if you want to go for like a vintage type of vibe, then there you go. You've pretty much made a reshade already. You can obviously flatten the color. In this case, I'm not going to be using Native Enhancer. Where is Lightroom? Am I being blind? I think I am being blind. Right, let's just put active to the top. Need Lightroom. We'll get RTGI for this as well. Obviously, it's not going to look like this. Don't worry. I will be going through it. So we want these. Adaptive tone mapper can help if your image is looking a bit dull, but again, you need to mess about with it a little bit. What else? I tend to use ambient light sometimes, just because I feel like it does look quite nice. Like if you get, I believe with ambient light you can get like these dirt textures, and it can just make it look a little bit nicer. So for this one, we'll leave it on. Bloom and HDR, too much. We can add some clarity actually, and highlight. Nope, not that one. What is it called? Right, cinematic depth of field. I'm gonna use just because that's my go-to depth of field effect. This is. Yeah, we'll put that one on. In a lot of old reshades, everybody used to use a filmic pass, but I don't necessarily feel like it is necessary anymore, just because you can get the exact same effect if you just mess about with the effects a bit more. Right, we'll get MXAO, which is basically ambient occlusion. I do like to use this product 80 effects just because, oh, I've still got, right, I'm gonna have to sort that out. Solaris is good if you want to brighten up your image again. Optical flow, I don't actually know what that does. We don't want that. Shadows, midtones, center tools lock. There we go, that's what we want. Right, so for the time being, we're using these effects. Radiant. Now, this is one of the things that a lot of people mess up on when making reshades, and that is the order in which your effects go. Ideally, what you want is your depth of field to be very bottom. If you decide to use the border for the black bars at the top and bottom, if I can find where the border is. So if we put border, put that there. You want your depth of field to be above your border, because otherwise your border is going to get blurred out with your image. So you want your border to be at the very bottom of your effects. Cinematic, I'm just going to quickly turn off autofocus. Need that. And I'll actually turn it off for the time being. Now, MXAO to the top. RTGI to the top. Now you see how that's kind of leveled the image out. If you move it, what it does is it messes up with the other effects and it basically intertwines it, and then you get these disgusting looking shadows. And because you've got RTGI going over all the colors or the effects that you're using. So for example, this is a light, it's extra light to put into your reshade, and again, you'd want this to kind of be towards the bottom, just because I know the way that this effect works, so I already kind of know this. But your RTGI you definitely want at the top. Next, your LUTs you also want to put at the bottom. Depending on what LUTs you're using, obviously is going to change the effect of the image. So for example, if I tend to use cool light, but as you see, this messes up a bit. So obviously if you see that your image is looking a bit mashed up, then you need to redo some of your effects. So as you see, if I use multi-LUT and I drag it down, that looks fine other than the big massive bloomy areas. But then if you put it up, then you get all these kind of like shadows here, and I guess if you're going for a certain effect, it can look good, but in my case, that's not what we're gonna do. Right, so then gonna go for a summer vibe. For the time being, we are going to turn off Magic Bloom, Magic HDR. We'll leave ambient on. So for this, that's actually quite nice. Now obviously you can change like how drastic the effect is. For me, I tend to kind of find the preset that I like the most. Like for example, this neutral one, that doesn't really do much. You know what? Yeah, I think we will stick with this one. Now for this, I'm going to put this to 0.5, 0.6 maybe, and then the Luma to 3. So then pretty much that effect is done. Now obviously you go to your other lot and then you kind of go through it and see this one looks very summery, very kind of Miami type of vibe. So again, you can change the intensity with this effect, specifically the Prod 80 Cinetools LUT. So just kind of depending on personal preference. Like for example, I'm dragging the Luma up and down. It kind of either dramatizes the shadows or it kind of fades them out a bit. So I think keep it at like a nice balance, 0.875. And this is obviously the blues for the chroma. We want to leave that up because it is a summery vibe type of LUT. I don't really tend to mess about with these ones too much, just because it can mess up the whole reshade and you don't really want that. Right, so done with that. Done with multi-LUT. This one we can, right, as you see, brightness and shadows. That's what this one does. So we're gonna probably put these about there. Or leave that like so and that like so. Don't want too much light, but we still want it to. Oh, right. Next, clarity. Again, like I mentioned before, just go over, check what the effect does when you put it over which other effect. So for example, I think clarity on this preset is going to work best as where it is. I'm just going to quickly reduce the border because I don't like how fat that looks. We can actually get rid of the border. It's not necessary. Cinematic depth of field we can leave off for the time being. But as you can see, obviously, if I turn off clarity, the image is a bit washed out. As soon as I turn it on, the details start coming back. Now with clarity, you got to be very careful because the amount of pictures and stuff that I see with people honestly just putting way too much clarity on it, like 120% clarity, and it's very easy to tell, you know what I mean? So you need to mess about with it so that it actually ends up being nice. What have I just done? And I have two mouses for some reason. Okay, weird. Anyways, like I was saying, clarity. So I think we'll leave this on hard light. With clarity, you're going to want to mess about with these two sliders most of all, I think. Blending it when it's dark and blending it if it's light. So this kind of gets rid of all the clarity. This starts to bring the details back. Obviously, same with this one, just the opposite way. So I don't want to... Right, you see here? Just look at this like little shadow. If I bring that down, it becomes really dark. If I bring it up, it becomes quite light. So you want to find like a nice balance where it still shows off the details of the car. So what I'm really looking at is this front grille. So that looks about good there. And then again, you can mess about with the amount of clarity. So that's going to be extreme. That's going to be not so much. So I'm going to kind of go in the middle a little bit. Cool. So that's clarity done. And there you go. As you can see, pretty big difference. Now, this is another effect that I love to use. Just kind of messes about with some of the midtones and the shadows. Obviously, you can change all of these effects. So for example, shadows, right? You want lighter shadows, you want darker shadows. So we don't want to go too dark because this is a summery vibe, but you want them to be a bit more prominent, increase a bit of contrast. Or if you want them to be a bit brighter, a bit darker, so on and so forth. Obviously, if you want to make a different type of effect, then you can do this as well. It's completely up to you. Then highlights, right? So you don't want too high because then it looks like that. I'm going to increase it slightly, just that bit, like so. Then shadows are popping a bit more, but so are the highlights. So that's what we want. Now, ambient light. This is one of my favorite effects to use. Honestly, it's a lifesaver. So, how intense do you want it? See, with ambient light, it tends to put like a bit of a haze onto the picture, which is quite nice, depending on how you want it to look. Obviously, this is just kind of a template in a way for this reshade, but I'm just trying to go over some of the effects and what they do and how it will actually affect your final image. So I don't want it to be too dark, so I'm gonna put that down a little bit. We'll leave that down as well. That makes it lighter, so we want that. This is quite nice because we can change change the dirt texture essentially. So to kind of make it out as if there's like a sun glare, it does help. You can also add the lens in if you want to. You know, I think we will. But we're not going to make it too obvious. So just to see what's happened here. So why am I getting in the car? No. Alright, whatever. Alright, I have messed up because I managed to get into the car. Didn't need to. But see, straight away. So that's vanilla. That's the reshade. Like, we haven't even finished. And it already looks like a Miami type of vibe. Do you know what I mean? So this is what I'm saying. Like, you just got to put a little bit of time into it. And you will figure out how everything works. Now you see this, some of the cars are a bit dodgy. So you got the shadows there on the seats, and that doesn't really look that good. What we'll do is maybe move the camera angle a little bit, like so. So reshade on, reshade off. Pretty big difference already. Right, next. So that's ambient light done. Lightroom, again, very massive lightsaber. Lifesaver. Because, for example, you see all these greens? You don't think that they should be green? Hey, you can change them to be more blue. You can change them to be more orange. It's completely up to you. This is why I love doing this. So for example, we want the greens to be a bit more prominent, right? And say you don't want the sky to be that blue. You can turn it a bit more turquoise, which I think we will do. But then you got to remember that you need to mess about with the blue as well, because obviously it does affect it. What I will also do is actually move Lightroom to the bottom, because Lightroom is going to end up changing everything. And right, so we want the greens to be green, we want the aqua to be aqua, and we don't want the blue to be too blue, but we don't want it to overpower it either. How does that look? Okay, so it's made it less aqua, bit more blue. That's good. Next, exposure. Right, oranges. See, the building on the right hand side is changing colors now, so we're gonna leave orange exposure a bit up. And the thing is, with these sliders, your best bet is to literally just do this, see what it changes, and then you can kind of work with that. The greens probably gonna increase a little bit. Aqua, probably do about there, and then blue. Again, we want to increase the blues a bit. Saturation, again, this is all personal preference, but I'm just kind of showing you guys how I would make my reshade. Now the greens were very green, so I've just lowered the saturation a little bit. The yellows I will boost up slightly. Oranges I will boost up slightly as well. Nah, don't like that. And then we'll just boost that slight bit there. Now we're onto the curves. Now what I tend to do mostly is leave it about 15 to 20, because that does add a bit more shadows. And then this is standard 255. Sometimes I'll put it to like 245, 250, just to make the highlights pop a little bit more. You can also change the exposure. I'm probably gonna reduce it slightly. Gamma we might put up a little bit, like so, and then like so, like so. And the thing is, I think I'm quite happy with the rest. I'm gonna reduce the saturation just a bit so it's not too overpowering. You can also change the white balance, so if you do want it to be more like Vice City type of vibe, here you go. And then if you want it to not be that harsh, then I'm gonna probably increase it just a little bit, and then probably about there. Oh, I've done it again. Why do I keep doing that? Jeez. Right, so that is, what was that? Lightroom. So there we go. There's the difference between that, as you can see. Not too much, but it's there. Levels is pretty self-explanatory. It's the same thing as what I just did in Lightroom. You can change the white point. I'm probably going to leave that about 250 and put that about 15. There we go. Now RTGI and MXAO. As you can see, it adds shadows. Do you know what? For this one, we're not even going to use MXAO. I just don't think it's worth it. RTGI does plenty. So we're going to move the camera, we're going to change the time as well. Right, there we go. So reshade off, reshade on. See the difference? It's mad. So where is the sun coming from? From over there. So it's going to reflect here. I don't know if I like that. Oh, okay. Frames drop. Right, I'm going to leave it here just so I can sort out the luminance of the RTGI stuff. So RTGI. Pretty self-explanatory if you know what you're doing. If you don't, then watch what I'm doing. Ray length, I tend to put on about 10, because otherwise it kills your frames. Extended ray multiplier, leave it on 1, because otherwise it doesn't look that natural. Amount of rays, I don't see any point going above 10 because again, frames. Now, yeah, if you want it to be really smooth, or actually no, it makes it sharper here. Put it on 40, but I don't do that. I put it on about 20. And then the thickness, honestly, don't overpower it too much. I put it on about 10 to 15. I think it does plenty. Enable precise lighting. Again, it's up to you. As you can see on the bottom of the front bumper, if I enable it, then it makes the shadows a bit harsh. If I disable it, it makes it a bit smoother. Next is the ambient occlusion. So if you want your car to basically look like it's a glowing piece of gold, turn that all the way up, I guess. Well, actually, no, you turn it down, and then that's ambient occlusion. I'm stupid. I didn't even read. But ambient occlusion, I tend to keep 2 to 3, just because I feel like that's the best effect that it does. So we'll just put that in the middle now for 2.5. Like I said, if you want it to glow, put it all the way up. If you don't want it to glow, put it down. I want it to glow a little bit, so we'll probably put it about 3.75. And fade out mode, probably keep that on 2. And you can change the fade out range as to where it goes. So we'll probably keep that there. As you can see, this is where the lighting hits the vehicle. That's the normal channel. That's whatever. What you can also do is render a still frame. I don't tend to use this because it doesn't really make that much difference. But yeah, so pretty much, guys, that is the reshade video. Like, as you've seen, in how long have I been recording for? Half an hour. Okay, so in half an hour, through this together, we'll put Lightroom back on. Magic Bloom, we don't need. Magic HDR, we probably also don't need here. Gradient I don't know why that's on. Keep the border on. Cinematic, move cinematic depth of field just above the border but below everything else. Keep your, so right, effects wise, what you want to do is border first, then your depth of field, then all your different colorings, so that's your LUT packs. Then if there's anything that really drastically changes stuff like clarity, try to keep that in the middle. For example, ambient light, I'm keeping slightly above just because I do want the colors to, the color effects to affect it. Then you got your levels, which is your shadows and your highlights and all of that shebang. And then most importantly, keep RTGI or MXAO at the very, very top, because otherwise it will look like shit. See? I mean, it doesn't, I mean, I take that back. Like, for this one, it doesn't look that bad, but you do genuinely want to keep it at the very top. So yeah, now the next thing, or the last thing, should I say, is going to be the depth of field that a lot of people seem to get wrong. So for example, let's take this car, right? Let's go to Palio. Park it up here. I think we'll add a bit of stance to this car as well. Through F6, lower that a bit around it. That's not. Then what we can do is extend that, put the wheels in a bit, extend the back, the wheels in a bit. I say a bit, it's quite a bit, but right. There we go, got a clean build. So I guess if you want to pose with your car, then pose with your car. So press arms three, and then go into cinematic camera, position yourself, bada beam, bada boom. So obviously the depth of field right now is a bit weird, but what you'd want to do is something like this. Now obviously, depending on the picture and the scenario, you can disable some stuff if you really don't want it. For example, say I want it to be a bit more warm, I can disable that lot if I want to, but you get the gist of it. Now with the depth of field, I love to use cinematic depth of field. I just think it's probably the best depth of field effect there is. So I kind of want to get character in it but still get the front of the car. We'll do like so, and then what you can also do is mess about with these. So I don't want the front to be blurred. Depending on what type of effect you want, this adds a very nice bokeh effect. If you turn the, the overall blur quality down, if you turn it up, then it's just going to be like very smooth blur. I tend to keep that down just because I like the effect that it gives. Again, actually turn that off so that we can see how it changes. So as you can see, it's not very nice when it's up. Post blur, leave that off because it don't look very good, tell you that. What is this? Right, anamorphic. So that makes your depth of field vertical, in case you didn't know. We'll probably increase a bit like so, like so. Right, we'll leave that like that, leave that like that, and that. I don't think we want that. And there you go. And that is a picture right there. Obviously, you can move the camera about. If you want to take like a detailed picture of the car, then again, find a nice angle. Right, there we go. Reshade off, reshade on. What we can also do here, go into Lightroom. For example, if you think that the blues are way too much, turn them down. So aqua minus 0.5, 0. And then the blues. I mean, this picture will probably look better if my character is not in the way. Now what we can do is this, and then if you want to change the vibe of the picture, you can also just go into the LUTs and change it. So for example, this one I think will look right. We'll keep that on that one, Cinetools, but I think something like this. Then it looks a little bit more natural. Obviously the blues are still prominent, but there you go, guys. Pretty much the video. This is a 40-minute video. Bloody hell. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut this down a bit. But yeah, that's pretty much a tutorial on how to create your own reshade. Obviously the effects will vary from reshade to reshade. What I can do as here, for example, put on another one of my reshades. So this one's got a bit more of like the whites popping out. Obviously I've messed about with my depth of field, but if I wanted to take a clean picture of this car, there we go, right there. And the thing is, I like this reshade because the details are quite nice in this one. Obviously, boom, highlights. Want to take a picture of the rim? Take a picture of the rim. You want to take a picture of the headlight? You can take a picture of the headlight. Boom. See? Simple. Honestly, the best thing that I can say for this is just try something new, right? Honestly, just try whatever you think. Let's try this. What is this? It's probably gonna look like shit. Oh wow, the blues are very blue in this. But yeah, you get the gist of it. So it's been your boy Vex. Thank you guys for watching, and peace out.